All right, it's a couple days later than it usually is, but it's still right on time, I guess. What better way to start the first week of the regular season than with a Morning Pitt Mailbag? And so that's what we're doing here. You know, we had the linebacker news at the end of the week last week, so we decided to talk about that on the Friday edition of the Morning Pitt, which means we pushed the mailbag back to Monday. And that's what we're doing here to get your week started. It is game week. Training camp is over. Kickoff lunch and all those things are in the books. Pat Narduzzi will have his first in-season press conference of the season. Today, we'll have coverage of that from the south side of Panther-Lair.com. But first, let's get it started with the Morning Pitt Mailbag, the first one of the 2025 college football season. It's here. It's Morning Pitt Mailbag here on Monday, August, what is today? 25th, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, it's the Morning Pitt Mailbag here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. You know the website by now, Panther-Lair.com, the Pitt site on the 24/7 Sports Network. It's a place you can get all of our Pitt coverage, Pitt football, Pitt basketball, Pitt recruiting, Pitt transfers, Pitt everything, all at Panther-Lair.com. And, of course, message boards to hang out with other Pitt fans. All day, every day, Pitt fans are hanging out on the message boards talking about Pitt sports at Panther-Lair.com. And you want to be part of it, too. I mean, like, all year round, there's something to talk about related to Pitt sports on the message boards, and Pitt fans are talking about it really 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. But once you get into the college football season, that's when it really takes off. And the message boards, they've already been really active over the course of the last month. That's only going to increase once the games start getting played, and there's something even more tangible to talk about than what we've had already. And we've had plenty to talk about throughout Pitt training camp. We're going to have even more once the season starts on Saturday with Pitt's season opener against Duquesne at Acrisure Stadium. So get on the site now, Panther-Lair.com, and of course our YouTube channel right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We have all of our Pitt video content, these daily morning Pitt videos, Monday through Friday, every day of the week to get you a little bit of Pitt talk to get the day started. And then we have our, we have our live show every Wednesday night at 8:30 right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Me and Jim Hammett and you get together and talk, and you are part of it because the chat screen over there, you put your comments and questions in there, and we interact and have a little back and forth. We'll do the same thing on our live post-game shows that we do after every game throughout the college football season. And then we'll have press conferences, interviews, videos, highlights, all kinds of stuff, all kinds of video content for you right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and then you won't miss any of the Pitt video content. All right, let's jump into the mailbag. We got great questions from the Pitt fans at Panther-Lair.com, and Thunder Pitt Road got us started. Chris, to me, this season hinges on Kade Bell's ability to grow and adapt as a coach coordinator, particularly against Power 4 coaching. How confident are you in him taking strides this year running the offense? I would start by saying I think this season hinges on staying healthy. I mean, we've already seen a couple of injuries that cut into the depth at linebacker, and we have, so there's already a couple knocks against them. But we saw how injuries affected last year. And this isn't a downplay kind of the effect of Kade Bell, the Kade Bell effect as they went through that 6-game losing streak, and we'll get to that in a second. But I wouldn't put it above the impact of the injuries, the injury to Branson Taylor and the injury to Eli Holstein. Those two injuries in particular cost this team. I mean, probably multiple wins. I think with those two guys, they beat Virginia, they beat Boston College. Given how close they played Clemson without those two guys, I think there's a pretty good chance that they win that game. I think they beat Toledo with Eli Holstein and Branson Taylor. Although if those guys stayed healthy, they wouldn't have been playing Toledo in Detroit. So it'd be a different story depending on who they end up playing against. But that was the biggest factor, is the injuries. And this season hinges on keeping the offensive line healthy, keeping Eli Holstein healthy, and keeping Desmond Reed healthy in particular. I'd probably put those two guys, Holstein and Reed, at the top along with the offensive line, however that group shakes out. Maybe Lyndon Cooper you might put up pretty high on that list. Obviously, in light of these linebacker injuries, Kyle Lewis and Rasheem Biles are pretty high on that list, and Braylon Lovelace too. Like, I think as you start the season, you've got a handful of guys that are just, you can't lose them. You cannot afford to lose some of these guys. You can't afford to lose Desmond Reed. And that's not a knock on Juelz Goff or Ja'Kerian Turner or anybody else, but he is just that good and that important to this offense. I don't think you can afford to lose Eli Holstein. And I'm someone who thinks They've got a pretty strong quarterback room with Cole Gonzalez and Mason Heinchel. You can't afford to lose Eli Holstein. You can't afford to lose Desmond Reed. And now with the linebacker depth being what it is, you already didn't want to lose Kyle Lewis and Rasheem Biles and Braylon Lovelace. Now you can't lose Kyle Lewis and Rasheem Biles and Braylon Lovelace. And so that's what the season hinges on. I just pulled up a classic like Pat Narduzzi move, and even like Jamie Dixon to some extent. It was a Pat Narduzzi move in that you asked me about Kade Bell's development and growth and adaptation as a coordinator and a play caller. And I talked about something completely different for the past, how long has it been? Like 2 minutes or something like that. And that was also a Jamie Dixon move. What Jamie Dixon would always do, I'm getting off even more of a tangent here, but what Jamie Dixon would always do, if you asked a question that had any sort of premise, right? Any kind of like, Jamie, you guys haven't shot free throws well this year. In this game coming up against Villanova, they're a great free throw shooting team. Could that be an equalizing factor or a way you could close it? He would spend his entire answer talking about how their free throw shooting has been better than you think it is. Like if he even picked up in the insinuation of a premise, he would spend his entire time. And I just like, I used to laugh about it because you would try to find ways to ask a question that would encourage him to stay on topic and actually answer your question. Of course, Jamie was at practice one day in training camp, so it was funny that we just ran into him. But that was a classic Jamie Dixon move. To your question, though, Kade Bell's ability to grow and adapt as a coach and coordinator, I'm 100% on board with that being huge for this season. What I think you really need, I think the key to it is, all right, Kade Bell had to go into this offseason with a fair amount of humility. And this is not to say that I don't think he has any humility or that I don't think he's humble. I mean, I think he's a very confident play caller. I think, most guys who are good are. You know what I mean? Like some of the best play callers, some of the best coordinators are very confident, and they kind of have to be. I mean, they have to believe in what they're doing, and I think Kade Bell does. I don't mean to say that he's cocky or something like that, or that he's lacking in humility, but he needed to be able to sit down this offseason and say, okay, what could I have done better? Like set aside Eli Holstein getting hurt. Set aside Eli Holstein being a first-year starter and a redshirt freshman. Set aside Branson Taylor getting hurt. Set aside all these things. What could I have done better in play calling and perhaps even more so game planning and tailoring the offense each week to face unique and different opponents and what different opponents will be doing? Because I don't know if that was always the case. I think there might have been games last season where Pitt won or lost where the approach was, here's our offense, this is what we do, and it's going to work against everybody. We're going to call our plays, and our plays are good enough that they're going to work no matter what the other team does. And that's probably oversimplifying. I think Kade Bell would tell you about things that he tailored in every game, but I don't know if there was enough of that. And I'm not sitting here pretending like I am watching their offense and saying, oh, geez, why are they doing that against that coverage or whatever? Like, I'm not going to pretend like I'm smart enough like that. But talking to other people who maybe observed this offense or were around it, I think there was a feeling that maybe a little bit more could have been done or a little better job could have been done in planning for opponents, in game planning and trying to be ready for how opponents were going to defend Pitt so you could then, have counterattacks, right? And so that's a huge part, I think, of the effectiveness of the offense this season. We put up an article about Eli Holstein and what he faced with Cal, where Cal threw a lot of coverages at him and really kind of confused him and made life difficult for him. I mean, like some of that's Kade Bell too. Kade Bell needed to learn as much from the Cal game as Eli Holstein did. And so I think that's huge. So your question, which I still haven't gotten to, I'm still just addressing the premises. Your question, how confident are you in Kade Bell taking strides this year running the offense? I'm confident. I am. I think Kade Bell, can still believe strongly in his offense and his system and what he does, but I think he's also a coach's son. I think he's been in football and around football his whole life. I think he has to have learned, hell, he might have had conversations with his dad this offseason, like, hey, what do you think here? What should I do? Or maybe he got advice. I don't know. Maybe we'll get a chance to ask him this week. But he's got to know that there are things he could have done better. And I think just having the background in football that he has, I think he's got to be aware of that and open to it. And willing and able to make those kinds of adjustments. So I'm fairly confident in him taking strides this year as a game planner and a play caller, but we'll have to see it. Big Show 2000 says, in your expert opinion, who leads the team in sacks this season? Well, we'll do the same thing we just did. We'll attack the premise for a while about this idea of an expert opinion. Like the list of things I've gotten wrong is, could almost fit in the Grand Canyon. And we know that because you guys never hesitate to bring it up. And that's fine. I very much believe that if you're going to throw stuff out there and say this will happen or that'll happen or I believe in this or I believe in that, I mean, you should get called for it. And I think those times when you get it wrong can be informative and instructional for how to get it right the next time. Who you listen to, who you believe, how you take various comments from training camp and what you take as when everybody's telling you Bengali Kamara looks like an NFL prospect, maybe you take that. That was a hard one to walk away from. I was still going to run with that no matter how skeptical I was about it, and I wasn't very skeptical. But I'm saying if I had applied some lens of skepticism to all the praise I was hearing for Bengali Kamara that year, 2023, I think it was. If I had applied, I don't think I could have applied enough skepticism to get me off the Bengali Kamara hype train. So, but in my expert opinion, which is not very expert at all, who's going to lead the team in sacks there? Kyle Lewis. How about that? Actually, you know what? I'll go off the board. We won't take last year's sack leader. I'll tell you that I think Rasheem Biles. If Rasheem Biles plays 12 games, 13 games, I think he played 12 last year. I think Rasheem Biles could be this team's sack leader. I still think it's better for this defense if the defensive ends are leading the team in sacks, if they're the guys creating pressures. I think when you look at the best defenses of the Narduzzi era, the most effective defenses in the Narduzzi era, it was the defensive ends were leading the charge. 2019, 2020, 2021, 21 and 22, you started getting the defensive tackles heavily involved. 19, you had the D tackle, Jalen Twyman, and the defensive ends, Rashad Weaver and Patrick. Oh, no, Weaver didn't play that year. It was Patrick Jones and Jalen Twyman on the defensive line. In 2020, you had Jones and Weaver. 2021, Haba Baldonado had a good year. Kalijah Cansey really broke out. 2022, Cansey was an All-American. I mean, this defense is at its best when the pressure is coming from the front four. I think the defensive ends will be better in that regard. I think you'll get a little more production out of the defensive tackles, but I still think it's probably going to be a linebacker. Partially because I think the linebackers are just that good, and partially because I'm not entirely sold on the defensive line. I'm going to need that group to prove itself to me and to everyone else. So I'm going to say Rasheem Biles ends up as your leader in sacks this season. Diehard Panther, what will the final record be, and will we beat West Virginia? Yeah, I do think they'll beat West Virginia. I think they'll go down and get a win in Morgantown for the first time since the 13-9 game. The record, let's just talk regular season, right? Because we know those games and those opponents. I've talked myself into 9-3, but I feel like I have to allow for one additional toe stub. I don't know if it's the injuries that were announced last week or a freshman walk-on kicker, any of those news that came out late in the week. And that's no disrespect to Trey Bukowski. I think maybe he'll be really good as a kicker. I don't know. I just know you got a true freshman going out there to be the kicker. I know that your linebacker depth has been largely decimated. And it's still, we haven't even seen that major injury on offense, which feels like it'll probably come at some point. And so I feel like, 9-3 with a toe stub being like the NC State game, that game being the pothole, but probably there'll be one other. And for God's sakes, it'll probably be Boston College again, because this is what seems to happen. Narduzzi, again, is 1-3 against Boston College. It's unconscionable. They shouldn't lose that game, but I think there'll be another pothole. So I'm gonna go with 8-4, the most milquetoast, average, mid prediction you can possibly make. Predicting this team to go 8-4, even though Narduzzi's only gone 8-4 3 times in 10 years, 2015, 2016, and 2022. So we always say that he's a perennial 8-4 coach, or it's often said that he's a perennial 8-4 coach, but he's really not. He's had other records than 8-4 far more often than he's gone 8-4. He's only done it 3 times in 10 years. But nevertheless, I'm going to go with 8-4. I do think they beat West Virginia. I guess I'm predicting them to finish 5-3 in the conference. The 4 losses being Louisville, Notre Dame, NC State, and probably Boston College or something. But they, 8-4, probably end up in a decent bowl. Probably shouldn't go back to Detroit, but we'll see. RNC1121 says Pitt has had struggles with multiple defending tight ends over the years. Is it a component of that because in practice the Pitt tight ends are not much of a threat historically, so the team doesn't get to really simulate it properly? No, I don't think so. I mean, I think when you're going week to week, you're facing the scout team, and it's more about plays. I think the problem is it's not necessarily they're getting beat one-on-one, and that tight end just made an incredible athletic play. They're just getting schemed out of it. Other teams are scheming their tight ends into good position. I mean, you think about where tight ends have really killed Pitt. It's those damn, what does Narduzzi call them? T-shoots or whatever. It's a tight end running up the seam after a play action. And why does that pass hit? Why does that guy get open so often? It's because they run it with a play action. And Pitt's linebackers are so geared toward taking 3 steps toward the line of scrimmage if the quarterback so much as lowers the ball near his waist. I mean, this has been a huge problem. I mean, you go back and look at what Mason Rudolph in 2017 with James Washington did against Pitt. It's just running. I mean, their RPOs, play action, whatever you would call it, but it was just, whereas the linebackers were supposed to get hands on James Washington in the slot and disrupt his timing and slow him down, they saw Mason Rudolph lower the ball just a little bit, like it could be a play action. I forget, they had a good running back that year too. I forget who it was, but it was somebody good. And as soon as the linebackers saw that, they were running toward the line of scrimmage. James Washington flies past them. He's running at the safeties with a full head of steam. And that's a hard cover for the safeties. You're getting those plays. That same sort of maybe overemphasis on defending the run, on stopping the run, I think creates those opportunities for the tight ends on those play action passes as well. Because look, even the year when 2021, Pitt's best year for tight ends under Pat Narduzzi, I think Miami crushed them with tight end screens and things like that. So I don't think it's about who they're practicing against. I think it's about just other teams finding ways to take advantage of this defense's heavy emphasis on stopping the run. And, because oftentimes you're going to have linebackers and maybe a safety going after those tight ends, and you throw them off their marks when you put them in conflict, right? And you get them on the play action and get them going after the run. Richard 2928 says, Chris, how concerned are you about field goal kicking? If the game comes down to a last-minute field goal, how confident are you that this won't be a problem? Well, I think, field goal kicking has been a concern for this team ever since Ben Sauls graduated. Ben Sauls was really, really good. Ben Sauls was 6 of 7 on 50-plus field goals last year. That's absurd. I mean, he was just that good. And so it was always going to be a challenge to replace him with someone consistent, had that big leg, and could make big kicks like Ben Sauls could. And we thought they found their solution when they brought in James London, the transfer from Murray State. James London maybe not up to the task. Clearly not up to the task. He got beat out by a walk-on freshman and left the program. Trey Bukowski seems good. Big leg. Feels like he feels like he's got a range in the 60s. Says he's hit a 58-yarder in high school. His kicking coach told me he's the man. He's going to be really, really good. I'm willing to believe all of that. I'm willing to believe that Trey Bukowski can be really good. But he's a true freshman. He's a guy who was in high school 4 months ago. And he's going to come in, and he's going to be trying to kick in Morgantown. He's going to be trying to kick in Tallahassee. He's going to be trying to kick in the Carrier Dome. He's going to be trying to kick against Miami. He's going to be trying to kick against Notre Dame. He's going to be kicking in a stadium that I don't know if it's quite as tough as it used to be, but still has a reputation as being a tough stadium to kick in. He can be really good, and he can have sky-high potential, and his ceiling can be through the roof, and all the ceiling through the roof. Has anybody ever mixed that metaphor before? All those things can be true, and it's still a dicey proposition to have a true freshman kicker. So my confidence about the kicking game heading into this season is not what it was heading into last season, nor should it be. No one should have that kind of confidence other than Trey Bukowski and his parents and maybe his kicking coach, And that's, again, not a knock on him. It's just the reality of the situation that, you're in a tough position going with a true freshman kicker. And hopefully he comes out and proves us all wrong and he nails it and he's money. Chances are there might be some nerves. Got to get the operation down and all that kind of stuff. So that one's a little bit dicey. We'll see what comes of it. All right. Great questions there. We had a couple left over. We'll use those to start the mailbag this week, and we'll have a mailbag on Friday. This will be a 2 mailbag week. Last week we didn't have any mailbags. This week we'll have 2 mailbags. And we got some great questions already to start it. We're already at like that 20-minute mark on the video, so people always tell me the videos are too long. So we'll cut it off here and save a few questions for Friday, and then we'll take more questions throughout the week to get next week's mailbag fired up. But thanks to everybody who submitted questions this week. I appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed your last weekend without Pitt football until basically December or something. So it all starts this week. Panther Newsies in the South Side today at noon. We'll have coverage from there and video right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So thanks for tuning in today. Hope you had a great weekend. Hope your Monday is a great one. Get your week off to a great start. We'll catch up with you tomorrow for the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.